And really, when I look back at it, what really changed for me is I became sufficiently motivated. And I think that's a very important fact for anybody who creates success, where your back is against a wall, where you have to perform. And that was the part I was. And the funny thing is, at that moment, I didn't know where my life was taking me when I made that decision. Well, I ended up becoming best friends, really close friends. I always say Bob is one of my closest friends. We worked side by side for 13 years, and I was a sponge to everything he taught me. And he really taught me how to win big. And he taught me how to think big. There's all this, a lot of books on thinking big. But I had somebody who had been doing this for, at the time I met him, 50 years or so, and he really taught me to think big. And I learned so many lessons, and I learned how to serve. And I really think that was the big thing for me, is learning how to serve, that changed my life more than anything, because I had such a great example. And I was a great student. To become a great leader, you have to be an amazing student. You've got to be a great follower. Napoleon Hill talks about that in Think and Grow Rich. And I became, Bob would always say, you're one of the best students I've ever met, because if I told you to do something, I never worried if you were going to do it. I just accepted the idea. And, so much has changed. Like, I've mentored over 30,000 people in over 100 countries now, with the partnership that I had with Bob and the Proctor Gallagher Institute. And it was, you never know when one decision is going to change your life. And that was the decision that really changed my life.
That's incredible. Arash, thank you so much for sharing that. Like, I feel like I'm speaking to Bob as well through this, because it's fair to say you've become Bob Proctor's top coach. Like, you've elevated at every level, and there's so much to unpack in what you just said. So even the part around elevation, right? You didn't just want to transform once, you wanted to keep doing it and repeat it. And I think that's something worth kind of diving into.
Yeah, Bob, if anybody who's listening has ever followed him, he teaches paradigms. And, the paradigm, we have to understand if we're going to change our results. And it's a multitude of habits stored in a section of our subconscious mind. Well, there's only two ways we could change them. One is through spaced repetition and elite level coaching. The second way is an emotional impact. Well, emotional impact, 9 out of 10 times, are something negative, right, Tim?
Mm-hmm.
And when I made that change, I said, anybody can do this once. That was my motivator. Anybody can do this once. I've got to repeat it to make it a part of my paradigm. And I didn't just want to repeat it. I wanted to create a massive quantum leap. I wanted to continue making quantum leaps part of my self-identity. And when I did that early on, and I promise you, I really mean it, I did it very unconsciously, but I kept setting the bar so much higher for myself. And I talk about standards a lot. Standards are very important to me. And I believe our personal standard is our DNA to success. And I kept upping my game, upping my standard. And, Bob would joke with me. He goes, I didn't know what I had in you until I measured your heart. And you don't know. Like, I didn't know what I had either.
Mm-hmm.
And really, when we choose in, we have to choose in with an open heart. And that's what I did. And when you choose in with an open heart, it is limitless where you can go. You literally take off the ceiling, and there is no ceiling. So I made what my greatest accomplishments were my floor with my next goal. And then I keep doing it. I still think in those terms that I don't know how far I can take this. And I don't think anybody knows how far they could take it. But I always tell anybody who wants to listen that if I can do it, anybody can do it. I really believe that. I think greatness is easy to become because there's so many great leaders out there. There's so many great teachers out there. And the great part of it is the greatest accomplishments that people have made, they want to bring everyone with them. They want to teach it to the people. That's why I say greatness isn't hard to become, because there's so many people doing so many amazing things right now. And you just need to be bold and really ask for as much as you can. And that's what I did as long as I was with Bob. We kept asking, and I kept asking him. And I'd say, how can I get better? Where can I get better? And because I was very secure at this point in letting him give me any feedback. I really appreciated if he was critical of me. Because when you were working with Bob, Bob wasn't just, okay, here you go. He was firm with you. Like, he would tell you if something was not right. And he would tell you if you didn't do it, but he never hold it against you, but he always held you accountable. And that accountability really impacted my life quite considerably.
So that's huge. There's a big change that you went on, and it came from working so closely with Bob. And can you just talk a little bit about the role of the heart regarding the mind and vibration and imagination and some of these higher faculties? Because I think people don't know, especially enough, about what that actually means.
Yeah, I think the heart is everything. And most people have scarcity in their heart. And the first thing we have to do is remove that scarcity. And I could tell you, I was at the first of the list with scarcity. And I looked at my past failures or my past setbacks. But when I really decided to change my life, and you want to really get that word I use, decided. And you're not going to change your life if you just make a decision. You have to make an irrevocable, committed decision. This is what I'm doing no matter what. But there's no such thing with an irrevocable decision without great discipline, because you can't go further than you are with the same set of discipline. You and I cannot grow further than we are right now with the same amount of discipline that we have. Well, when we're leading with our heart, that's the greatest gift we have, because that's where our true greatness is. You've heard it before, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Well, the heart of hearts is where our subconscious is. And our subconscious is limitless. It's no more difficult to create the ideal relationship, the ideal weight, $1 to $1 million in our subconscious. But we've got to understand that we have to understand ourselves to be able to do it. And when we lead with the heart, we're leading with the best version of ourselves. We have more power in our heart, in my opinion. I can't prove this, but in my opinion, from what I've experienced over the last 13 years, we have more power in our heart than any other place that I've experienced. Because when somebody can be on this call and say, well, no, the brain is really powerful. Well, yes, I agree, but the heart is where we get our desire from. Our desire starts in our subconscious mind. It knocks on our conscious mind and says, hey, this is your want. Before I can make it into a desire, you have to bring it back to the subconscious, but it starts with a want. Well, our want is the essence of who we are. So this overweight, kid who was not using his potential is how I would look at myself. And I was not using my potential because I wasn't aware of what I didn't know. And then once I became aware, my whole life changed. But that awareness started with this inkling in my heart that says, come on, there's more for us to do. And I know, Tim, you understand what I'm talking about. And there's people listening right now that's saying, I feel that way, but I'm scared. Or can I really do it? And they ignore it. Most people let their wants go within a moment, within a few minutes, within a week. They let it go because they're letting the outside world dictate their self-image. And so what is happening? The outside world is controlling their thinking. And we can only go as far as we stretch our thinking.
Man, that's so good. That's awesome. Talk about desire. This is one of my desires, to speak to you and have this conversation. This is absolutely phenomenal. And I think that's it, right? So looking at external results and then trying to work out how things happen, rather than actually what it is, you've got to go from within, right? It's whatever's within is then going to create the result outside. And I know that you speak a lot about that. So thank you for sharing about that, because what I think as well is that a lot of people, they don't have a big enough one. I think going back to your earlier point around expanding that thinking and thinking big, can you tell us what happens if the want isn't big enough? Because obviously, to use you as an example, like you had your 150K in debt, you had your big job loss, and then something changed, and then you became coachable. And I think there's parts of this that are worth exploring, because your story is just so good.
Well, thanks, Tim. If I look back, I think the thing that changed, I chose into my life. I wasn't just existing anymore. And I put myself out there when I had nothing backing me. So I had to perform, but I chose in to say, at that moment, I really believe my self-image grew significantly the moment that I said no to what was comfortable and said yes to the unknown. And that's where the magic happened for my wife and I. That is when our lives changed, when I really chose into my life. And I chose in to doing what I loved, which when I started studying this, God, I was just so fascinated by it. That's all I wanted to do. But the error I made, Tim, is when I was studying and it wasn't working, is I wasn't acting on the ideas. Bob said a phrase to me. He says, "You don't know this, you know about it. All I have to do is look at your results." That was an absolute game changer for me. And I said, that is exactly why I left all that knowledge in my conscious mind, but I never transferred it into action or getting emotionally involved with what I wanted. So that's why, to answer your question, that's why the wants stay small. People are setting their goals or setting their wants based on what they think they can achieve, but there's no inspiration there. There's no growth there. There's absolutely none. I'll tell you a story that really shifted things for me in my thinking. So Bob came to Scottsdale and he was filming. And he had a program called 6 Minutes to Success. And I said to him, I said, can I come watch you film? Anytime I could be around him, especially in the beginning, I was a sponge, And he said, sure. So, this man, at every take, it was one take. I couldn't believe it. It was like I was watching Picasso. And it was so amazing. Anyway, we're at this break, and he was taking a break, and he said, I had just achieved my first big goal. And he said, what's your next goal? And I told him, and he didn't like it. And he said, because it wasn't double or triple what I just did. Because I told you earlier, I was worried, can I do it again? Anyway, he looked at me straight in the eyes and he said, this is not a good goal. And I said to him, well, what do you think it should be? And I said, double. And he said, do you trust me? And I said, yes. He said, will you do what I tell you? I said, yes. I remember I had this blank stare and I almost felt sick. And I committed to him that I was going to double my goal. And I walked out of there. Him and I had such a laugh about this years later. And I walked out of there and I achieved that goal in 4 months. Wow. In 4 months, I achieved it. But I really surrendered to the process. Like if I tell you I'm going to do something, it's done. Like no matter what, even back then, if I give him my word, it was a done deal. Like I'm committing to it. Now, I don't know how long it's going to take, but you could take it that I'm going to put my whole heart and put everything into it because I already saw it once. I just had to put myself on the hook again. And that's when really amazing things come. When you put yourself on the hook and you say, I don't know how it's going to happen, but here's one of the greatest secrets that I discovered. If you set a goal much greater than you, that you really want it, that your want has to be through the roof. If your want is not through the roof, you're not going to get it. Your want has to be through the roof. And you're not going to know what to do next. That's the trick. And you've got to be okay with that. Your spirit's going to know what to do, and it will communicate through your intuition. That's one of our faculties. That's how you'll know the next step. But most people are driven by their intellect. And so their intellect stops them. Their intellect goes into logic. And we want to be illogical. Logic kills more dreams than anything. Logic and doubt, I will tell you this, kills more dreams than any other form. It's greater than fear. Fear is a blessing to us. It gives us feedback of what's going on inside. But when we're using logic, I'll do this when that happens. The whole paradigm is in control, and then the paradigm makes your decisions. Your paradigm sets your goals. And that's why people are setting too small of a goal.